All right, so besides doing basic walls, like just the same walls over and over again, you could pretty easily create other walls that are different textures and just put them into your game and use basically the same sort of sprites. So in this example here, they created, for example, these gray walls are our basic ones. These red ones are a different texture. So they colored the sprite differently and used a different texture for that, but it's pretty easy to create mazes this way. Now, to avoid the issue of having infinitely thin walls, they basically made it so that you never get to look at an infinitely thin wall. You just look at corners, for example, like this. So that's kind of a way to force it not to show you those thin walls. If you think about it, in most of the games that you're looking at, if you're looking at a wall, it's actually kind of a cube, an oblong, or not oblong, but a very stretched out cube. So you're never looking at just an infinitely thin plane. All right, so adding some stuff to the game. So fog might be something you want to add. So this is the line of code for fog. What it does is you have to put it in right after you set up the 3D. This says true or false, are you going to add the fog? What color do you want the fog to be? Where does it start? How many pixels away? So this one is 10 pixels away. And where does it become totally opaque, which is at 300 in this case? That probably is a little bit less than I want, but I'll start with that. So I'm going to go in the player. So after I set friction here, I'm going to put in the fog. So right after the start in the creative end of the player. Now if I take a look at this, it's going to be hard to see unless I look down a long hallway. So I don't know if you can tell, but far away it starts to get dark. Let's try making it a little more intense. So let's try 100 away. That may be too much. So now it's very dark very soon. And now, if you want a colder fill, let's add in blue fog. There we go. Yeah, it's a little weird. And if you want psychedelic, you can go with fuchsia or whatever. So there you go. So probably about 200 is what I want. Yeah, that looks good to me. All right, so that's fog. All right. So as far as making our motion better. So as you may have noticed that as soon as you hit a wall at any angle, even just like a barely to the side angle, you stop, just dead stop. It would be probably better if you wanted to actually kind of slide along walls. So if you're going in a certain direction that's kind of at the same sort of angle that the wall is, you want to slide along it. Now there's two things that we have to do to make sure that this works. The first thing is we've got to actually disable the solid collision detection in GameMaker. Because if you have a solid object, by default it sets your speed to 0 no matter what. So we're actually going to go into the basic walls and unclick solid. So none of these can be solid. And then the basic idea is we're going to jump ourselves to our previous position if we hit, and then check to see if we're moving more in the horizontal direction or the vertical direction. If we're moving more in the horizontal direction and we hit a horizontal wall, we slide. And then the same sort of thing with the vertical. And that's what this code here does. So in the player, in his collision with wall basic, instead of just setting his speed to 0, we're not doing this anymore. We are instead doing all of this, which includes speed equals 0 at the bottom. But there you go. So if I space this out a little differently so I can read it. So this particular programmer has done some rather clever stuff all in one spot. So the first thing you do is if you hit a wall, jump back to where you were last step so you don't move into it. So then it checks to see which of these is larger, absolute value of h speed or the absolute value of v speed. So which one are you moving more in with that direction? And then also check to see if you're not hitting a basic wall or any child of a basic wall. If both of those are true, then you're just going to add your, to your x position just your horizontal speed. So you don't use the y position at all. So you slide along the horizontal wall. Same sort of thing with vertical walls. This is checking the vertical walls. Exit is a special command. What that means is stop running this section of code. So it jumps completely out and doesn't run anything else in this code. So if I'm sliding along a horizontal wall, I'll set my x to be whatever it was plus horizontal speed, and then it completely leaves this. So I don't run any of this code down here. So exit leaves that event. The same is true for the vertical walls. And if neither one of those is true, then I set my speed to 0. Then I stop. So if I'm not sliding, then I will actually stop when I hit a wall. Now, something to keep in mind in the collision detection. What's actually happening is this little circle here, this player circle, is actually hitting these walls here. So there's actually not three-dimensional wall collision going on. It's actually, if you imagine you weren't drawing 3D, when this blue circle hits this particular gray wall here, that's when it calls a collision, not the walls you see. So secretly behind the scenes, it's actually using the blue sprites and the gray sprites to detect and see if you've run into a wall. What this does mean is that, like if a little bit of a ridge of this player gets stuck in between these two walls, it's going to stop it, because it's going to consider that the collision detection. So if I run this, so let's see if I can slide along this wall here. There we go. Oh, got stuck again. So another thing is that this player sprite here, because it's round, well, it looks kind of round, doesn't it? Except it's not. So you notice how it's got these ridges on it. So since it's not perfectly circular, it's getting stuck in the edges of these walls here. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to make this horizontal sprite's mask a rectangle. Well, it is for this one, and it is for this one. I think I'm actually going to make the player sprite also a rectangle, just so that it doesn't have that problem of getting stuck. And now, to be honest, I don't even need to change his image angle. This actually doesn't need to happen anymore, because I'm not actually using that information anymore. So I think I'm going to pull this out, to transform the sprite in the player's step. Besides, that's a drag and drop command, and we don't use those. There we go. Sliding.